from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Talking Catholic. This is Mike Bress, officially doing my first intro as the lead on Talking Catholic. I'm usually brought in by my co-host Marianella Nunez or Jen Morrow, but today I'm kind of running the ship, and I'm excited to be with my co-host today and good friend down on the second floor of the Pastoral Center, Pete Sanchez. Pete, how's it going?
Hey, Mike, good. I did not know this was your first time doing the intro. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you. Yeah, I always leave it to the other person because I don't know how to start, and I just want to be the guy that pops in. You know, as you said before we started recording, the Andy Richter of the show. I'm always good to play that role as well.
Or what's the other one? The Ed McMahon to Johnny Carson. There you go. No, but if you hadn't said anything, I wouldn't have thought anything of it, Mike.
Oh, well,
you did a great
you.
job. I'm sorry we can't toast.
Yeah,
to that,
next time.
Next time we'll.
Yeah, next time we'll toast. So how's everything going? It's been a busy time at the diocese. I know for the Catholic Star Herald for sure, but just personally, and as we're recording this on to the Tuesday, the 3rd of December for next week. But we're just got done with the Thanksgiving season and we're into Advent. So how's all of that been going for you, Pete?
It's been going pretty well. I had a good holiday break with family, but also interesting story out of, I was down for the first time in North Cape May. I'm sorry if you hear me thumping. I'm
right against the wall there in the vault.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hitting this thing back here. I'll try to keep my elbow steady. Sorry, guys. So I was in North Cape May for St. John Neumann Parish. Some people would say Newman. I say
Neumann.
St. John Neumann.
Yep.
The parish says Neumann, so I will defer to them. And Father James King, as the pastor, invited me, and there was actually an interesting program that they let their faithful know about, the Bethlehem Holy Child program, which I never heard of. I don't know if anybody else is aware of this. Basically, it's a program. There's a school in the Holy Land, not too far from Jesus' homeland, Bethlehem, and not too far from Jerusalem, in Palestine, that educates these children going through basically behavioral difficulties, psychological difficulties, social difficulties, due to the conflict that has been going on in the Middle East. So this program is it actually is neat because they're the students, the makeup of the students, half Christian, half Muslim.
Okay.
So it's a place of harmony where these individuals and their families, these children and their families, just want to live and worship their God. So it brings these communities together. I heard stories last week from Sister Monica, who was visiting. She's a Franciscan sister of the Eucharist. They actually founded the place in 1996, and they came to the parish to let them know about their work, the good work that they're doing, the families down there, what's going on with them through this time, and raise awareness. So that'll be in the next Star Herald, and that was just really, again, it was a nice drive down there. I kind of like those long drives sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And North Cape May, had never been to that parish before. Beautiful church, St. John of God Church. If you get a chance to get down there, please do so. And that's kind of, my head has been in, all the good work that they do in something where in Jesus' birth, in the land of Jesus' birth, to help children, who were born where he was.
Yeah, what a connection.
And, so how can we help them? And Mike, so what have you been involved in?
Yeah, well, same great Thanksgiving. I think we're all probably in that mode of that it was strangely a little bit late this year, and we're right into December right after it. So it's really, a truncated time calendar we've got going on. But, we came off of Discover Catholic Schools Week just before Thanksgiving, which is an initiative that was led by the National Catholic Education Association, the NCEA, to help sort of bring about the re-enrollment and enrollment season for our schools. So it's a it's not as big as the Celebrate Catholic Schools Week, which happens, at the end of January, beginning of February, that I guess, a lot of people remember from their days in school or see out and about nowadays. But this one is in the fall. It's a good chance for schools to schedule their first or second open house, do some things with the community. And, it's, again, a little bit smaller, but still a lot of fun. It's really neat to go around and see how the open houses of each of our elementary schools are functioning, what the different things that they do, how they set them up, the kids do it. My son, who's in 7th grade at St. Margaret's, was a student ambassador this year for the first time. So he got to do it. And he told us yesterday, he thinks the kid that he walked around is locked in for end of this year or definitely next year. So kudos to him on getting somebody in there. So that was exciting. We had a really good week of content for me, to promote our schools. And now we're getting into the Advent and Christmas season, which is always an exciting time for the schools. It's a busy time. There's going to be great activities, concerts, plays, all the classroom activities that the students get to do. I think this is, it would seem pretty easy to think about, but that what a unique opportunity our kids have to celebrate Christmas truly in its true form, not just Santa Claus, but the idea of Jesus's birth and what that means for us as Catholics, that they get to do that in school, and that's an important thing. And I excited to, in my role in marketing and communications, promoting that and telling people about that and highlighting it and helping hopefully make connections in the Star Herald and do some stories, in there and some photos. It's always exciting for me to see that and be a part of that. So as you say, a good long drive sometimes is nice. I don't mind going down to our shore schools when this happens, because it's a nice long drive to get my mind into it and listening to, I think it's the Hallow app has like the Advent challenge now and some of the daily reflections and just getting into that spirit. I always, I'm the first to tell you, I love all the Christmas movies and Santa Claus and everything, but as they say, the reason for the season is always important too. And I think in our work, it helps that we get to do that every day. So
yeah, well, this might sound blasphemous, but I have been listening to Christmas music in the Advent season. Hopefully,
I had to wait until the calendar flipped. God love B101, but they put it on in November, and I shunned the station until December 1st. When they put the music on.
And then they ended on December 25th, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. If you're going to do it that long, go the whole month. Let's
do
get through
like January 6th.
Right.
Just that's not going to hurt anybody, I think. But then they do that choir competition every year.
They do.
Some
Catholic schools were represented last year and have been, if I'm not mistaken, for the last couple of years. So I'll have to keep an ear out. Maybe check that after our recording here, Pete. That's a great idea. Yeah, I think Camden Catholic was in it or has been in it a number of years, and it's a great opportunity, and the kids always sound so great. So it is that season. We put up the Christmas tree, we put up our nativity. We were just talking before we started recording. We have our Advent wreath out on the dinner table, and we have we call it our little blue book that we received from church that has all the daily reflections, and we read each night dinner together. So we're in it, which is great. Why don't you introduce the guest we have today, Pete?
Well, we have because this podcast is dropping, to use a music term.
Love it.
Right, December 8th or December 9th.
9th. Yeah.
This is it's a little confusing to me, at least. So December 8th is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. But correct me if I'm wrong, maybe our guest can correct me, but it's transferred in the U.S. to December 9th this year. And that is a holy day of obligation, today, December 9th. So, holy day of obligation, Catholics go to Mass. And we have Father Adam Cichoski here with us. He is rector of the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception. And you are director of vocations. Just want to make sure I get your title correct. For the Diocese of Camden. Priestly vocations.
Priestly vocations. So working with Father Josh Nevitt.
Yes. And how are you today? How are things?
Everything's great. So thank you for having me. And it's great to talk about the Immaculate Conception as my parish and connected to it in a lot of ways where I was ordained, but also the name of my seminary too, the Immaculate Conception. So Mary's been with me the whole time.
That's something to, like you said, Mary's been with you the whole time, because can you explain sometimes the Immaculate Conception can be a little bit confusing. Is it about Jesus? No, it's about Mary. And what is it about? So it's a doctrine, and it's a recent doctrine, the last 100 years, right? Or am I using that word right? Doctrine, dogma? Dogma,
So
thank you.
Again, that teaches the truth of our faith, and it's something that continues to give us more to pray about and to really discover about, I think, the Blessed Mother. So it's something that she's been a part of our country for a long time. And actually, one of the first Catholic churches was named the Immaculate Conception, and that would have been 1584 in Jacksonville, Florida. And then over the years, that devotion really, really grew. And it was John Carroll, who's the first bishop of Baltimore, in that first diocese, which had our first 13 colonies, had a great devotion to the Blessed Mother as well. And he placed all those things under her protection. And again, as that grew, it was officially named the patroness, actually even before the dogma came out. So it was in 1846 when this was the title of the patroness of our country. But then it was 1854 when the dogma was promulgated by Blessed Pius IX. And it would help, again, to grow in the devotion of the Blessed Mother and grow in our own desire for holiness, I think, because we see truly the grace working through the Blessed Mother. And that's the great gift of the Immaculate Conception, is God had a plan for her, just as he has a plan for each of us, but to keep her free from the stain of original sin so that she would be able to bear his son. And that's the gift where she was able to remain immaculate, free of all sin throughout her life, and that it's something that allowed her to bring our Savior into the world. And so Immaculate Conception has a great part to play in the history of salvation and each of our histories, that she's one of the great helpers in so many ways to us, but especially through the Immaculate Conception, as she's chosen by God and placed separately for a special purpose. And that's a real gift when we pray about it. And it's one of those things that, again, we learn more and more about it. The more that we think about it, the more that we meditate and pray on it, just to see the important part that Mary has in leading us always to her Son and leading us always to God.
And I like it how this is in the Advent season, too. It's so important. Why? Do you know why December 8th?
Well, it's going to be 9 months before we would celebrate her birthday, is September 8th. So it's always 9 months before. And it really is the perfect time. Again, when you think about it, we have this great hope that comes into the world. It's been prophesied right from the beginning of the fall, right? As Adam and Eve commit that first sin, God puts into motion, again, this plan that eventually takes place with the help of the Blessed Mother. She cooperates with his plan.
And I think with Mary, it's you mentioned how she's been with you. Now you're rector. Then you were at Immaculate Conception up in Seton Hall University. I'm sure even before that you had an idea of Mary. How important has she been to your life, like your faith?
Yeah, Mary's we would say the mother of all priests, and she's someone that we look to because she said yes to the Lord without any hesitation, without any real doubt. That she had no idea what was going to happen in the sense of what her life was going to be like. She knew it was going to be different, but she still said yes. And that's one of the gifts, again, that Mary gives to us, and just the example that she sets. And she's that very first disciple, one who brings Christ with her. And we try to live that out in our priesthood, but also in our lives. And I think a devotion to Mary is something that we learn very early on in the Catholic faith, that there's Mary is so special to us. But also one of the struggles at times where people get the wrong opinion. A lot of people say, oh, you put Mary up as another God or someone who's equal to Jesus. And she's definitely high up there, but she's not equal to God, in that she's one that always leads us to her Son, and it's never just focused on Mary. Mary's always pointing us to her Son, pointing us to the truth. And so Mary is one that has great care and great love, and we see that through especially the apparitions, and that's one of the great gifts too, is when she speaks to the world through that. So just thinking of the Immaculate Conception and Our Lady of Lourdes, when she appears to St. Bernadette, it's about 4 years after this dogma has been promulgated. And St. Bernadette is really just a poor peasant girl that can't read, that really wouldn't know anything about theology. And when Mary appears to her and says, "I am Immaculate Conception," she reports this to the priest. And, it's one of those things where this girl would have no idea what that meant, but she's just reporting really what she had heard, and how that kind of helps to, work that process of validating that apparition. And I was just reading recently too, Tolkien, the author, had a big devotion to the Immaculate Conception and had a big devotion to Saint Bernadette, which is really interesting, where it was just something that he would have had growing up, but it was the Song of Bernadette, the movie that he saw, and it was something that, just kind of touched his heart in a lot of ways. Again, this young girl just kind of picked out of nowhere, really, as she was someone who was living a holy life, but someone who was very poor, and, family was struggling in a lot of ways. But Mary had, chosen her to bring this message of hope to the world.
And this brings up a question for me, and I mean this is when Pete and I were talking about doing this episode, it helps, because I think even as a Catholic school graduate, and I think sometimes this holiday can be a little, or this solemnity could be a little confusing for folks, especially given the time of Jesus's birth. So when they say Immaculate Conception, you mentioned, sort of mentioned, that she was born without sin. So, but she had human parents, and right. And so what part in that, in that she was born human, but still had that grace, how is that important to the story as well? That, that there's that element that she was still, born as a human.
Yeah, and I think that's what connects her to us in so many ways, that she's lived through everything that we've experienced, and the graces she had, she was full of, as the angel says, hail full of grace. And I think that's, we see what one day we will be like, we will have all that grace inside of us, and we receive those graces in so many ways in our days now. But we know, again, sin has that effect where we're still falling into those traps that we know she didn't, that she lived that life that was dedicated to God. And it's just a beautiful way of, again, seeing an unstained life and just knowing that could be us, if we tried hard enough, if we kept, and the church helps us in a lot of those ways, where we have confession, we have the Eucharist that, again, helps us to maintain that life of holiness. But we fall so often, and I know I struggle just as much as anybody else. And I think having Mary there to guide us back, kind of lead us back, and it's just in a tender way, I think, is what we really see in the Blessed Mother. We see her love and her care for not only her son, but for each of us, and I think at the end, as Jesus gives her to the disciples, behold your mother. And I think that's something that we really need to take to heart, that she's there for us, interceding, of course, praying for us in her son's presence, and always leading us where we need to be as well, and that she's there guiding us.
And how do you think that can translate, for the work in schools, right? And explaining this to what's important for kids to understand, what's important for, adults to understand. But, when this comes up, Monday, our kids will be in school, which will be another question that I'll get to about what they should be doing, or we could talk about it now, what they should be doing in school to celebrate, such a momentous day in our faith. But, what are some of the key points that kids should know and understand about Mary, and also about the Immaculate Conception?
Yeah, and that's something I've been really praying about, because I'll be doing our school mass over at Holy Name that morning, and it's hard, like you said, to really kind of translate that into something that they could take and something that they could understand. But I really think it's about the power of God, the grace of God that he gives to each of us, but also how God has a plan for each of us as well, and that God set Mary on this course, that she worked and cooperated with the Holy Spirit. She worked with what God gave to her. And so many times we're given these gifts and we just kind of either push them aside, we don't see them, or we don't use them as God is intending them to. So it kind of has us open our eyes to the things that we're experiencing and to the things that are happening around us, and how can we work with that, And again, Mary throughout her life, you see the struggles, you see the challenges, especially during the Passion. And that's always really what sticks out to me in the life of the Blessed Mothers. She's there that whole time, and just to think about that witness and to think about, this was something that she could easily walked away from, but she had faith. Again, she knew something greater was coming. She trusted in the promises of God. And that's what we hear throughout the Advent season is, we are going to send you somebody. This person is coming. And, you think of Isaiah or you think of Jeremiah, all these people in our readings today said it so beautifully. There are people that have been waiting to see what you see. They have been waiting to hear what you have heard. And we have that gift now with us in Jesus Christ. And we celebrate, that moment in history of his birth, and we celebrate his presence now with us, and we look to that second coming, because just as his birth was foretold, we know that he's coming again, and that's the other hope that we hold on to, that there's something greater coming towards us, and we always have to be ready for it. And I think Mary is a good way of preparing that, of just seeing like we are set aside for something special through our baptism, that we are called to something greater. And how do we continue to live that out? Is a challenge for each of us, and we each do it in our own vocations in our different ways. So it's just amazing, and how Mary really relates to everybody, whether you're priest, a religious brother, or a religious sister, single, married man or married woman, mom or dad. Mary just speaks to us each in our own situation, and we can get so much from her as she teaches us and just really shows us the way.
And I think too with Mary, what we talk about her humanness is, what I appreciate is she is open with the angel, basically saying in so many words, I don't know the way, I don't know where this is going, but I trust in you. Mm-hmm. Let it be done to me according to your word. And that's been helpful to me. One of the ways that I try to pray the rosary every night before bed, and I've been learning, I've feel like there's new dimensions every time I pray the rosary, because they have the different mysteries: joyful, glorious, luminous, and sorrowful. And they have different days you pray them, but also there are different mysteries, and they each have like a fruit or, something. And I'm still learning about that. Like, I think it was the first in the joyful mystery, the Annunciation, or I think it's the Annunciation, the joyful. And, it mentions how Jesus, Mary, that's when Gabriel appears to her. And basically, I think the fruit of that is faith. I'm not 100%, but or hope, or one of them. But I just always seem to, with the rosary, get so much out of that. That's not for me. It's a nice Marian devotion. What other kind of devotions are out there for people, to maybe mark this day and to mark their love, devotion to Mary?
Yeah, so the rosary is a great treasure, and there's so many different kinds of rosaries out there. And we pray the rosary for vocations, we pray rosaries for a lot of different intercessions. And, I think that helps us to see the life of Christ through the eyes of the Blessed Mother. And it just reminds us of what we are to really imitate. And there's novenas that we do, and big celebration. So, on the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception, going to Mass is an important part of that. And, we have these holy days of obligation really to teach us these mysteries of our faith, these things that shape who we are as Catholics. And they're things that are so important to us, where the Church says, to make that time to pray about it, make that time to receive our Lord that day, because, again, it's something that's going to help us to grow in our own vocations. It's going to help us to grow in our own identity as Catholics. And Mary plays, again, in a big part. So rosary, the novenas that we pray. I know there's a lot of devotions to our Blessed Mother through the Seven Sorrows, a lot of things that we can do that really unite us to the life of Mary. And she lived, quote unquote, a normal life, but it was a supernatural one in many ways, in that she was, free from sin, from the stain of original sin, and just remain that way. So it's a great, again, opportunity for us just to see the true treasure of that devotion to the Blessed Mother. And, one of the greatest books is True Devotion to the Blessed Mother, and that's something that, again, reminds us that it's always leading us to Christ, that a devotion to Mary is a devotion to her son ultimately. That's what we're always pointed towards. So having a great devotion to her will help us to grow in that devotion to her son, and just understanding our own lives and how much we can do to share this great gift of faith.
I read a really interesting book I did years ago, Marian Consecration. Are you familiar with that? Or
yeah, the 33 days.
Yeah,
probably,
To Morning Glory, I think, by Father Michael Gately.
Mm-hmm.
I have the book, and in it, so you've done it.
Yes, yeah.
So you might be familiar with this way he put it, and I thought it was so beautiful. I've never forgotten it. It's like you send your prayers to Jesus through Mary. And of course, it's good to, I guess in some ways you can, for lack of a better word, bypass Mary. Imagine in that case, if you're just speaking to Jesus, all you have from him, you're giving him an apple. But with Mary not only shines that apple, but will put it on a golden plate. So Mary can add more luster to your intentions, to your prayers, and deliver them to her son. Am I getting that right? Does that sound theologically correct?
Yeah, well, I think our devotion to Mary and to all the saints give us that confidence that we're not alone, that there's somebody helping us, and it's somebody that, whether we ask for is granted or not by the Lord, that we know other people are listening to us, and they're helping us on our journey. They're interceding and they're praying for us. So if it's not what we desire, ultimately we know what God will desire for us. And they'll help us to understand that too. And I think Mary shows that in so many ways throughout her life, that it's always God's will.
So, and on that, Pete just mentioned, a book, and we even alluded to like a film, that talks about Mary. I'm fascinated, especially recently, on sort of the pop culture element. We have The Chosen now, and I pretty sure I haven't gotten to watch the full trailer, but there's going to be a Netflix movie on Mary, and I've gone and seen plays, so that, and we know there's all these different movies. So how do you feel about that sort of hitting that, I guess, mainstream? Does that help us understand, our faith better, or bring more people back in? What's your take on some of this stuff that's come out? Yeah,
I think it can really kind of hit us both ways, because some people will take everything they see really on face value, and right. We know that you always have to kind of dig deeper, because as good as these movies will be, they do take some license here and there, and it's like, all right, what's the truth, and that's where we have to dig deeper into our faith. And to have a movie of the Blessed Mother was always something that, again, we would talk about in the seminary, like how would you portray this? Because you would have to have the most beautiful woman be Mary, right. And that's exactly what we picture. And that's, it would be hard to kind of contain all that. I think there's just so much there. Again, just like the life of Christ, there's right. so much there where it's hard to put it all into one. Where reading through the scriptures, I think, is a great way, especially through, and we were talking just before about the infancy narratives, and just to see, just the language that our Blessed Mother uses, and just how, we hear she ponders these things, like she experiences all these things, but then really takes time to reflect on it, which I know I struggle with sometimes, because we're always kind of like, go. And that's where Mary is a worker, definitely. She's doing the work of God, but she also takes that time to really ponder and to really, really chew on these things, to see, there's something great here. And sometimes we miss that. We do these things and then we just go to the next. But, right. To think of the Nativity, again, just kind of blows your mind, just to see, you can just imagine Mary and Joseph in this manger, just sitting there, and this, the smells and everything of the animals, but Mary's there in like this joyful position, where right. she's just able to kind of smile and just to take in everything that's happening. It just kind of, again, blows your mind when you think about it. And when you really sit down and just kind of let that sink in, it really shows you a lot.
Well, and I will sort of give plug, I guess sort of pseudo plug to The Chosen in what you say about sort of the reality that they bring to her, mm-hmm. right? And she's older by the time the show takes place, because it's Jesus's ministry, but she's always there, and she is so normal and plain. Like you said, you want to imagine her this beautiful woman, which she is, but she's just like us, right? In so many ways, and others not. And I love their sort of allusion to, that she's never sinned. And, that's sort of brought up in the show. Yeah. And I think I always appeal to it because it's something hard for me as a parent to explain sometimes. And so this opens the conversation. My family, we sit at night and watch the episodes with the kids, and they can see that. And then they ask those questions, and they did the whole narrative around the birth, and sort of, I think they even edited it together for last Christmas, I think, where they segmented the story together into one story. And you do, just like you're saying, is the fear, but the happiness and what she knows is coming. And then there's always this, allusion to she's in on the secret, right? of what he, and I think that's where the liberties come in, as you say. Yeah. But I guess for me, it adds extra value, right? It gives a visual, for the visual learner, a way to take the scripture and enhance it almost. And maybe hopefully for some give them the opportunity to learn more, right? Which I guess would be a hope, right?
Yeah, and just thinking of it right now, with like as a parent, to think of Mary doing all those things that a wife and a mom would do, and just to see that life of kind of that hiddenness as well, that she did all these great things that we don't know about, and that she took care of our Lord and helped to raise him, and that's something that really is, again, you have to dig deeper into it, and just to see how it touches us and how it changes us, just that understanding of who she is and why she plays such an important part.
There's some interesting stories too that involve Mary in the Bible. That I'm thinking of the one when they lose him after they're traveling in the caravan. Joseph and Jesus have gone on to Mary, Jesus have gone on, I guess, pilgrimage. What is or visit family? What is the term? Yeah, and they and then they're going back in a caravan, and it's a long caravan, and 3 days traveling. They realize their son's not with them, so they turn around, they head back, and Mary, I'm sure, is frantic, and then they find him in the temple, asking questions and speaking, and Mary's just basically in so many ways is like, we're looking for you. We were worried sick, and Jesus says, didn't you know this is where I needed to be? And I think that's it's a lesson for me, at least, to just let things play out. Don't get worried. Let things, because Jesus is just like, don't worry, Mom, I got this. He knew what was going on, and I think what I find too, the last words of Mary, I believe, in the Bible are, in the wedding of Cana, do whatever he tells you. And that's when Jesus is, that's the miracle of the water into wine, where these, the wine has run out, and these people are worried because there's no more, the party's not going to be the party without the wine in some ways at this wedding feast. So these people are anxious, and I think Mary, having a little more experience with her son at this time, is able to tell them, don't worry, my son's got this. Just do whatever he tells you. And I think she's still, I think there's a reason. I don't know if that's divine intervention or grace, that is the last word she says in the Bible. Maybe it's just, that's the last thing you have to remember about Mary, is she's telling you to do whatever Jesus tells you. Don't worry. Have peace in your heart. It's really incredible. It's just great. And do you have any other favorite Marian stories, or any?
No, it just reminds me of most of our weddings. Right after communion, we usually have the gift of flowers to the Blessed Mother. That couples will usually walk over together and place flowers, and that's how I usually explain it. That we have a devotion and we remember those words, because the first miracle has taken place during a wedding, that Jesus is there, and especially after celebrating the Mass, we know Jesus is present, in such a beautiful way. And then to have the Blessed Mother watch over your marriage is again, just another great help, one that's going to help the couple to grow in holiness, because again, we remember her life as a married woman, and even as tradition would tell us, a widow, someone that had that faith in God.
Yeah, and going back to that wedding at Cana, I think has been portrayed a number of times. And I think, again, going back to it, sort of the comical nature that some movies and TV shows have taken on that they're there at the party and he's not ready to reveal himself yet. And then she says, well, you have to do this. They're friends. We don't want them to be ashamed. And then that's what kicks it off. So like you said, it's sort of her last official moment in the Bible, for last words, but it's one of the most important things that kicks off so much, in the next few years, for his story. One of the interesting things too about, talking about in some of the research that I did and wanting to, as we're talking about her life and her experience watching Jesus go through this, is there's made mention in a couple places that I did some research that she went through his dying on the cross, but it didn't necessarily need to be for her specifically because she was without sin. So, is that, thinking again about another layer to her as a mother? I mean, this is the human part again, right?
Yeah.
That she had to witness this again, probably in some capacity, knowing that he had to go through it. Probably it's not in the Bible, but probably had a conversation about what his path might be, and so, thinking about that kind of stuff, we've talked a couple of times about that motherly role, but in that, where is that spirituality, or what do you think that took to still be there, watch her son, humanly suffer, knowing that it was for everybody?
Yeah, and Mary would have been, a very observant Jew, someone who was raised in that tradition and the faith, and would have been taught all those prophecies that we continue to read about, and knew that something great was happening, and knew that something great was going to happen through her and through her work with God. And I think it's really a powerful thing just to witness visually sometimes. And I think of the Passion of the Christ, and there's that scene where she's watching him, and it just it always strikes me during the Stations of the Cross, when we're singing the Stabat Mater, and it's full of grace now filled with grief, and that's something that always kind of strikes me a lot, just to know that pain was there, and again, that's something that would ultimately, it's Immaculate Conception's connected to the Assumption as she's, assumed into heaven. But it's still going through all that. And that's what I try to, talk to when I talk to parents or talk to different people, again, to know that these saints, and especially the mother of our Lord, knows the struggles, knows the challenges. And it wasn't easy for them, and it's not easy for us, but they're still trying, and we have to work together. We need to see that, that there is always hope, and that's again what Mary held on to, and that's what we hold on to as well.
I think it's appropriate in this Advent season to bring up. We're talking about how much we think Mary knew about Jesus, what was going to happen to him, and there's a song that I hear in circles among Catholic friends by Kenny Rogers, Mary, Did You Know? And yeah, I see you guys smiling, but I mean, maybe you've heard the controversy too, that people are like, wait a minute, she knew everything. And so I'm curious, Father, where do you fall on that spectrum? Where do you fall on that spectrum, Mike? Like, I mean,
trying to get us in trouble here with this one.
No, I'm really not. I'm just it's my
artistic
curiosity.
wise or theology wise?
A little bit of both, yeah.
No, that was always a big thing that came up in the seminary. We would say, just that's again the I guess the meaning. They're trying to do something really that it shows that, but again, we know that Mary had a good idea, that she knew exactly what was going on, and again, that's the grace that she had, and that's something very special and something very unique.
Yeah, I think for me, notice that I allowed the priest and the one who had theology through his life answer first, but I tend to agree with you, Father Adam. I feel like the closeness of their relationship, again, being a widow and her only son, and and again, we're talking about the Immaculate Conception. We're talking about Jesus's birth and the Advent and Christmas season. Right from the beginning of her life, she had a closeness with God. So I feel like the same would be in some capacity with her son, right? And I think we almost want to feel comfortable as human beings that she was at least prepared somewhat for what was coming, and maybe that made it marginally better for her, and again, I think back to, the Passion of the Christ as an example, and again, bringing it up to Chosen or any of the movies about Mary or the books that you read, there's that spirit. Even again, the you mentioned her being assumed right into heaven. Like, again, there was that she was this focal point of his life, and I feel like for her, she would have known so much of what was coming, or at least conversations or something, you would hope for. So that's the sort of, in my mind, hope of it. From a theology standpoint, it sounds like we're on some level, of basis here, but that's the, my ultimate hope is for her that she, knew what some was doing for all people, right? And again, that's the unselfishness for it.
Yeah, and I think the Immaculate Conception was something that wasn't just a new idea when they promulgated it, but it was something, if you read the Church Fathers, they speak about it, and it's really, anytime something's promulgated, it's usually to settle a controversy or a conflict that's been brewing, and that's where, again, this definitive statement, that she was born without the stain of original sin really is a truth, and, it's not something explicitly mentioned in Scripture, or it doesn't come out and say that, but in other ways it does. Hail full of grace. This woman is full of grace. It's something that is very special and something that you don't hear in other parts of the Bible when they're speaking to people. That there's a different language that's used, and just again reminds us that there is something very special about her.
Well, thank you for answering that burning question I had. But I think
hopefully we don't get sued by anybody over that one about record sales being down.
But I think I'm going to have to amend my other comment when I said earlier that Mary was a example of I do not know the way, but I choose faith. It sounds like she did know the way, or at least partially. So she had, So I'm going to change that. She knew she had an idea. But Mike, I know I want you to answer this, because I know we were talking about miracles earlier, and you and I were talking about something, how you can ask Father this about, you mentioned the miracles, and I know you, especially because of your favorite football team,
yes,
you have a particular interest in asking this one. So
I thought the religious question was going to be the worst one for me, but you calling out my favorite team that may not be a Philly one may be even worse.
I did not know that was a secret, Mike.
I don't know that it is. I mean, not here, but maybe on the podcast for the first time. But
be proud of who you root for,
I am
Mike.
Extremely proud of this fact, and I will shout it from the rooftops. No, I am a devout Pittsburgh Steelers fan. My father grew up in the Pittsburgh area, and although I do follow the Eagles and love all of the other Philadelphia sports teams, for football, it's the black and gold, which Pete and I were sort of talking about. And this is good. I'm glad you brought it up, because it is a question that I had and we talked about. Is going a little bit back to the pop culture. Is famously the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 70s during their Super Bowl run had a famous throw and catch called the Immaculate Reception, and there have been now other things that have been connected to that, and I struggle with that as a Catholic, that sort of a secular sport, although my favorite one still grab that. How would you as a priest feel about that kind of stuff, where they sort of take something like that, although helped us get to the Super Bowl that year and win. Right. I'm happy that it happened. Franco Harris, you're the best. But there is a level of what does that mean when it's taken that way, or maybe even more importantly, how should we feel when something like that's taken that way?
Oh man, my grandmother on my dad's side was from coal country, so she was a big Pittsburgh. Her whole house was black and gold, so the Immaculate Reception was a big part of who she was. So that's an interesting question, and I know I've seen the video of it, and it's just funny because you don't see what's happening, right? And if you think about it, that's really, again, the work of the grace, that you don't see what's going on, you don't see. Really, we don't know the full story. Somebody knows the full story, but we who are just kind of participants, or we're told what's going on. And I think I always have this funny story that I was assigned to Bridgeton, which is Holy Cross, but Immaculate Conception is their church. And for whatever reason, I was sending a thank you to Father Mike Romano, and I must have been tired or something that day, but I put, Rectory of the Immaculate Reception. And he goes, "Did you do that on purpose?" And I was like, "I don't remember writing that." I was like, but it's one of those things like pop culture where it gets into your mind, and it's just a funny, or a Hail Mary pass,
right,
like you're sending
okay,
it out
there we go. Yeah, that's another one.
The last hope. So I think maybe again there's going to be that truth that leads other people to if probably it would be lost in today's world, the Immaculate Reception of where that came from, but somebody had to again have some kind of background of
to know it.
Faith, and just to say this is something that was who again, a mystery,
right
know?
Well, and I'm definitely going to send this episode to my dad now to know it's fine that we can enjoy this even more, but to your point, you think about the time that happened in, right, and not really seeing that, did the ball potentially hit the ground? We didn't have replay like we do now, but there's another sort of story to that, since Pete opened the door and will indulge me for a second on this, is there was a one-man show that was in Pittsburgh for a long time, and they recorded it. My dad and I watched it one year, where a gentleman acted as Art Rooney, the owner, during that time, and he kind of sets the scene of their early defeats and sort of the team not being very good, and then as they got into the 60s and 70s, got better, and then into their Super Bowl run. But one of the stories that he tells, and I'm not entirely sure this is true, or there was some theatrical licenses, but they were losing that game against the Raiders, and he left the owner's box to go down to talk to the team, presumably that they have lost, right? And it's a great season. We got close. We were in the AFC Championship game, all those things, and missed it. And so as the guy says in the play, he then opens the doors, and people are losing their minds because he caught the ball and he ran it in for a touchdown, and they win. And so there's some weird, famously the Rooney family, Catholic family in Pittsburgh, so there's something to slightly, I'll call it divine in all of that, right? Intervention, that he,
poor John Madden, right, was the
other coach, I think, on the sidelines at that point. And so it's just it's funny, all those little, like you say, all those little things that make that connection to
his commentary, John Madden. I think it was in one of the things I seen where they have like the video of the refs talking, and he goes, "Is there consulting?" They say, "If we overturn this, are we going to get out of here alive?" And so there was probably a lot of pressure there on them. But again, it's something that we'll never know the truth,
right,
unless we were on that field. And I think there's even still controversy, right? When you I think what I take from that too, and you make a great point about, is that someone to have even made that reference would to have known about the Immaculate Conception, right? And so there's that gives you some heart to that, right? To even call it that later, there was some connection to the holiness, to the miracle that was Mary. Oh, I thought you meant to the football.
Well, that too, but then they went on to 3 more Super Bowls after that. But no, that there was still that faith, and even at that point, was in someone's life to make that connection, and could make that a part of it. So glad, Pete, I'm glad you put that out, remembered that question for us, and we will. I typically don't listen to myself when I record these episodes, but this one specifically, I'm going to check out just to see if Mike Walsh edits this part of the conversation out, because it's not about the Eagles. We're getting close to.
I am an Eagles fan, though. My grandmother is a Steelers fan,
right.
she understood.
I absolve everybody else of this fandom, but as we're starting to get close to wrapping up a bit, and one of the things I wanted to ask, because we, again, talked a little bit about it before we started recording, but is the question around reflection. So, I mentioned, before that in the Advent season, we have our, reflections book that we get at church every year. And we like to, as a family, read it. And then there's always sort of reflections on that particular day. I cheated a little bit before this podcast to see, what was written about it, for this day, because we were recording a little bit early. But what do you think is an important reflection that we should have on this day, like to think about if folks are listening to this early on the feet, on the Solemnity, or listening to it afterwards and thinking about it for the rest of the Advent season? What's a good reflection to, think about Mary and reflect on the importance of today?
Yeah, just again, the hand that God has in everything, and and how He sets things into motion, and we have the free will always to cooperate or not to cooperate with it. And when we say yes to the Lord, when we say yes to what is good and what is holy, we do great things, and Mary does so many great things, and a few are mentioned, but so many I think go unmentioned as well throughout her life. And just having the patroness as her as our patroness, the Immaculate Conception of our diocese and our country. We just went on pilgrimage, about 2 months ago, to the Basilica Shrine in Washington, D.C., that's named in her honor. And, something that, again, continues to have an effect on us as Catholics and Catholics in the United States, that there's, I think, a special connection to her. And it's not just us, but several countries, I think Spain, South Korea, Brazil, and I think the Philippines too have her as a patroness. So, she's universal, but special to each one of us.
Do you have a favorite icon?
The Blessed Mother. Well, I have a big devotion to Guadalupe. I love Guadalupe, and just the great hope that comes from that. And her words to Juan Diego, again, are just touching. Do not be afraid. Am I not here, your mother? And that's, words that I reflect on a lot, because, again, we find ourselves in those crazy situations, or those situations where we're just kind of panicking or just starting to lose it. And that's really where my life of prayer comes in, especially in my anxiety or nervousness. Again, we need that mother to kind of calm us down, and being adults now, our moms aren't right there with us as they were before. But still there's a calming presence. There's still a loving presence in our lives, through her. So she is a big help. So Guadalupe is a big one, and Częstochowa as well is something that's really special to us, and something that continues to really speak to who we are. And I think that's the other great gift. Mary kind of meets us where we're at as well, and we see in those apparitions how she appears and the likeness of the people that she appears to.
And Guadalupe is coming up. That'll be another beautiful celebration.
Yeah, no, and so as we kind of conclude today, I want to thank Father Adam for coming in. Definitely increasing my faith on the part of Mary. I think some knowledge that I'll be able to bring back to the dinner table this evening and moving forward. So I appreciate that. Pete, was wonderful getting a chance to chat with you. And before you go, any quick announcements on Catholic Star Herald that you want to tell the people as they get right? Your story. I'm looking very much forward to reading the story that you mentioned at the beginning. But anything else you want to tell the people?
Well, I'm working on a story. I think I did a story on Advent retreats and Advent concerts that are coming up in the diocese. That is on the website now, so check that out. And then just working on another cool things happening in the diocese. Anything going on at the cathedral that you can share quickly, Father? Or I guess maybe we can put them on the show notes. We're running out of time, right?
Yeah. We got about a minute left. Yeah.
Minute or so. Anything quick plug for anything, Father?
Yeah, so we'll be having our feast day celebration with Bishop Sullivan and Bishop Williams. We'll be celebrating our 12:05 Mass on December 9th, and then we'll have a bilingual Mass that evening as well in honor of our Blessed Mother and honor of our patroness. And then, of course, Guadalupe, I know, will be in many churches, so we'll have our Mañanitas on the 11th, and then Mass in a procession on the 12th. and then we're just looking forward to the Christmas season coming up. So it'll be a busy Advent, but a lot of good things going on. And Advent, I think, is my favorite liturgical season. Just beautiful prayers, beautiful readings, where again it allows us to dive deeper into this great mystery of our faith.
Great. Well, again, thank you both. And for South Jersey Catholic Schools, always check us out on Facebook. We'll be having a lot of great photos from our schools and how they're celebrating the Advent season and the Christmas season. Please be on the lookout for that. And if you're interested, southjerseycatholicschools.org for information about our schools. Otherwise, Pete, again, thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you. And we'll talk to you again next week.